Welcome back to The Juggle is Real. I'm Andryanna, and I hope you are doing well. We're still in those lazy, hazy days of summer, and I'm sure they're not feeling super lazy for you. They aren't for me, and that's why this week I am bringing back one of my favorite conversations from the podcast archives because it's one that is just as relevant today as it was when we first recorded it. I think it was about a year and a half ago. And truly, some conversations are just simply worth revisiting. We are just like in the thick of summer and, we're trying to enjoy these moments. Last week's episode, I've gotten some great feedback, whether you have that summer bucket list that you were revisiting or the summer feelings list, or maybe sort of like a bit of a mishmash and you're finding it tough to stay connected with your kids, to keep calm, keep your cool, and things might be getting out of hand. I get it because I'm right there. And that's why this episode is such a beautiful reminder that we don't need to parent perfectly. We need to continually repair and reconnect with our kids. And that just never goes out of style. And if you've ever found yourself thinking, like, I know how I want to respond as a parent, I know I want to, say certain things or not say certain things, but why do I keep reacting in this way? This is going to be a great episode for me. And we have had so many conversations on the podcast, about our own self-awareness and self-trust and emotional regulation and just showing up as the parent and the person that we want to be. And so this conversation with Kathryn and Flynn just beautifully ties so many of those ideas and those themes together. And just because we know something doesn't mean we're doing it. And that's why we need these reminders. And then we can take action from here in small and simple ways. Kathryn is such a beautiful person, a registered psychotherapist, and she is the center director of the Wren Center, Therapy for All Ages, and that's located in the Ottawa, Ontario area. She brings together attachment theory, trauma-informed therapy, body-based practices, and just years and years of experience supporting children, adults, and families together. So in this episode, we talk about why parenting can feel so hard, what is actually happening in our nervous system during those stressful moments, and how co-regulation and attunement really works. And then why repair, not perfection, is what our children really need most. And I think that is just so refreshing. So whether this is your first time listening, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Or maybe you're revisiting it with fresh ears and a new perspective, and maybe just like a whole new part of life and stage and place now that we're in summer. I just have a feeling you're going to take away something beautiful, something that you can use today, right here and now, something that you didn't know before. And I know I certainly did. So if that sounds good, let's dive right in.
This is the Juggle is Real podcast. I hope you feel seen, that you realize your worth, lighten your load, and prioritize your own needs. As we hear from leading experts and well-known faces in the wellness, entrepreneurship, education, and motherhood space, I hope you gain insights, proven practices, and learn actionable tools to help you enjoy the juggle of work, family, and everything in between with a little less stress and a lot more ease, joy, and fun. Most of all, I hope you find what you need to simplify, streamline, and supercharge your own journey of better balance and self-love. Are you with me? Let's get started. Kathryn, welcome to The Juggle is Real. I'm so thrilled that we're spending some time together. I know I have a lot to learn, and I think this is going to be such a helpful conversation. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well. My nervous system's like a little active, right? Because I'm excited to be here. So I'm a little active, little nervous, and happy. Yeah.
Okay, I love that you're right away recognizing and sharing this information, because putting a label on how we're feeling, I think, can just be so helpful in the moment, but I don't typically do that. So let's just start out with how so many of us are feeling, because we know that parenting it's intense. It is the most challenging job in the world, and it can feel extra hard when we're carrying our own emotional stressors, or we have
unhealed things happening. So I would love for you to help us understand what's happening, like in broad terms, because a lot of us, we have the best intentions and then things can get hectic and then we end up feeling really guilty or we feel shame. So when we're talking about the topic of parenting while healing, what does this mean? Can you share sort of in broad terms, what is this?
Yeah. Um, I'm going to start by acknowledging that parenting is typically, at least it was for me, I describe it as the steepest learning curve of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple graduate degrees. I'm a therapist, I'm a center director. I've taken on so many roles, and parent was the steepest learning curve. And I think we really forget that because on one level, we recognize what a paradigm shift becoming a parent is and how much our lives have changed. And we don't realize, we forget or don't know that the pressures on parents have never been as intense as they are now.
Yeah.
Right now, and especially if both parents are working, although that's in no way to say that if only one parent is working, um, there isn't intense pressure. But we've never worked, the only time in history humans have worked more is during the Industrial Revolution. And we've never parented more actively parented, and with less
Mm-hmm.
community support. So our nervous systems were really just not designed to be as isolated as we are and to cope with not just the time crunch, not just the intensity, but also the awareness. Like this, if you think of it, the circles, the ever-growing circles of awareness that we have, right? So our immediate circle, what's close to us, what we are directly responsible for, but then our wider circles of responsibility, like work and community, and then the things that we're aware of beyond that, like the multiple crises in the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? We really just weren't designed to cope with that kind of both the labor load and the mental load. So even folks who don't identify as having, what we might call capital T or even small t trauma are rocking into parenthood really just very under-resourced, not equipped, and through no fault of their own, right? Loving and doing the best by their kids, the best they can, but ultimately under-resourced.
I appreciate that you say we weren't designed to cope with this because so many of us feel like it's so hard to cope. And how do we cope? And how do we continue to juggle all of the things on our plate and do it in a way that feels meaningful, that we can feel good about, especially when it comes to our children? And you've recognized so many things in what you've said. I feel so seen right now, and I've just been nodding my head and getting like little like goosebumps because it's true, but we don't realize the immense weight that we carry within parenting. And it's a beautiful thing. And we love this journey and we want to be doing it. Like we are choosing to be on this path. But then, like you're saying, there's so much that happens. And how do we cope? And you mentioned the nervous system a couple of times. So I would just love a little bit more information from you in plain terms, because again, it's not something that we learned about growing up. It's not something that we've really been trained in. So how would you explain the nervous system's role just in simple terms and then in our parenting for someone who is new or maybe needs a refresher on how all of this works?
Um, Happy to do that. And feel free to interrupt or ask me to clarify or expand if it's not in simple terms. I once said to a 10-year-old client, I said, well, that's unsubstantiated. You know what unsubstantiated, right? They just shook their head. I was like, oh, right, because you're 10.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, so we're social animals, which means that we're designed to be in relationship, right? We're designed to understand ourselves in relationship to the other beings in our family and community. Our nervous systems are always trying to regulate our whole system, like our bodies. And so they are always scanning. There's a particular region of the brain that's doing it, the amygdala. With kids, I call it the Amy brain. And the Amy brain is always scanning for, am I okay? Am I not okay? Okay, not okay. And it's scanning everything you take in through all of your senses, including your mind. So in some other systems, like in some philosophy and spiritual systems, the mind is considered a sense, right? And that makes sense if you know that your nervous system has been really regulated. Maybe you're doing Shavasana in a yoga class, and then all of a sudden you wonder if you left the sprinkler on, right? And like you were so relaxed and now you're not because of a thought.
Mhm.
So our brains are always scanning for our state because what it needs to do is to help motivate us, right? That's really what the stress response and the survival response is. It mediates motivation. When we're super relaxed, we feel much less motivation because we feel much less threat.
Mhm.
When we are in a stress response, our Amy brains are scanning and saying, like, not okay, not okay. So you got to put the gas on, right? And so we're highly motivated to create change, to change the situation, which is why those circles of concern I mentioned are so impactful. And to bring it to children, right? We are worrying about our kids and
Mhm.
our parenting so much that we are frequently in a place of we're not okay, they're not okay, which means I'm not okay. Something needs to change.
So what happens then in our bodies when we're feeling that overwhelm, when we're overstimulated and but we're trying to parent calmly? Like what is going on then? And then is that then a stress response when we're triggered or we snap or we yell? Is that a coping mechanism? Could you maybe go into that? Because of course we all want to start the day beautifully. And I've got 3 boys and I have my quiet coffee and I wake up purposely before them so that I can have that moment of calm and that regulation. But then no one's listening and no one's getting dressed and we've got to get out the door. And now I see that we're late. And then I'm like, yeah, no, and I'm yelling. And then I feel bad and we're driving to school and then I'm leaving them for the day. And then I'm trying to repair and say, I love you and have the best day. However, I've just yelled at them, which has clearly upset them. Talk to me about this part. Like, is this something that is inevitable, or are there ways that we can work with the nervous system for that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, what you share, I can relate to. You paint a picture I think everyone can relate to.
Yes.
The whole journey. They can see the circumstance and then they know the upregulation, right? And then the ugh, right? When things settle and the guilt, maybe the little bit of shame that comes in, even just the awareness of like, oh, that's not how I wanted that to go.
Yes.
So our nervous systems, they don't discriminate between stimuli.
Mm-hmm.
Stimuli just piles on. So an example I used with a client earlier this week was if you go to an event and you wear high heels and a tight outfit and a ponytail that's giving you a headache, and you're not eating because you're wearing tight clothes,
You
right?
can't sit down.
Yeah, by the end of the event, your nervous system is registering pain and inflammation and deprivation. And if someone says something you don't really like, you're going to judge that way more harshly. Right. And you may even go into a place of like, your face is kind of stupid. Right. Like you may go into territory that feels really yucky when you realize it's happening because your nervous system doesn't separate all of that sensory input out from one another,
Mm-hmm.
which is why often, because stress and excitement are basically the same physiological reactions, which is why you might rock in till your weekend and you might have social events on that you think you're supposed to be excited about. And you might say, like, and I'm not even excited about that. Don't even want to go to the party because your nervous system can't separate out that obligation and its anticipation from all the sensory stimuli and stresses of your week. So we need to know that we are far more likely to upregulate when we've got cumulative stresses. Okay. And I think we all kind of know that, right? The hustle in the morning to get out the door, cumulative
Mm-hmm.
stresses, stressful,
Mm-hmm.
more likely to yell. What is what is so tricky in the parent-child relationship is that when when we start to get basically not okay, right? So when we start to get not okay, when our stress levels rise, you can hear right now I'm fairly relaxed. So my voice is going up and down, right? There's like more of a storytelling quality to it. When we're stressed, we lose that. Our voice flattens, kind of deadens, goes monotone. And that coupled with volume and our facial expressions of upregulation, our children, because they're humans, their nervous systems are attuning to our nervous system,
Okay. Yeah.
right? You don't even need a relationship. Bodies attune, they meet the heart and breath rates of the bodies around them, which is why you've walked into a room before and been like, I don't know what happened in here, but I do not like the energy in here. It's because your nervous
Yes.
system is already coming up to meet the upregulation in the room.
Mm.
So when we upregulate, our kids can hear it before they can even see it. And it's measurable. When our voices are stressed, other humans' inner ears, the middle ear, actually registers your voice at a lower volume. They literally,
Wow.
because they're already registering, we're not okay, right? Mom and I not okay, dad and I not okay, which means their nervous system is mounting a defense,
So
which could
they're
be down. Sorry, go for it.
are they more prone to not listen then? Like they're not hearing it when I'm saying, let's go. We have 5 minutes. Like, hurry up. They're like, their body instinctively is like, no, no, no. Like, we're cutting this off. Like, this is not something we want to get involved in. Like, it's protecting them in a sense. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And it's also possible that whatever they have in front of them is just more, it's just more compelling and you aren't cutting through.
Sure.
Because screen and particular kinds of screens give children and adults, let's be real, a disembodied state,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like a cutting off of the body. It's a reprieve from the stresses that we're all coping with. And so they're not attuned to themselves, and they're not attuned to what's going on around them. And the situation you mention is one I hear about at least on the weekly. And what I said to one parent earlier this week was like, I'm with you. My own kiddo probably has ADHD. What you're describing is so relatable. And right now, what's happening is your kiddo, through their behavior, is conveying that even though you've set the expectation, when I call you, you come upstairs, they can't do that. And so, what happens in our nervous systems, you set that expectation, kiddo can't do it, but you've said it. So you start to upregulate because we think that things happen and then we react to them. But actually, our nervous system is sending out resources, hormones, neurotransmitters, reactions to the moment it perceives coming.
Mm.
So if you're upstairs and you don't see your kiddo and it's time to go, your nervous system, your brain's already like, well, I don't know what's going on, because your brain doesn't actually know what's going on. It just knows what's happening in your body.
Hmm.
The last time we were in this state, you needed more stress hormones. So here they are. Here's some
Hmm.
gas, right?
Hmm.
Because you're already predicting that they're not going to come. Here we are again. Here we go again. And then that prediction upregulates you. So your voice upregulates. And even if you're not upregulated, I was actually going to tell you this later, but in my family, we have what we call a faces rule. And the faces rule, it really just means we're not going to talk to each other unless we've got faces.
Okay.
So no yelling across the house, no yelling between floors. And that's because even if you're like just yelling something like dinner, even if you're actually pretty okay, again, you yell and your brain doesn't know what's going on. So your brain's like, oh, the last time you were yelling, you weren't okay. So have some stress hormones.
Oh my gosh. Okay. This is a lot and it's so eye-opening, but very simple, I would say. And so just because you've said this is such a common situation, I can understand how this is happening in households everywhere where we're trying to get out the door, whether it's before school, work, practices, activities, etc., anywhere, basically. Anytime we have to get out the door.
Mhm.
Can we go through this process and can you share some ways that we can, because I want to talk about co-regulation, but ways that I can and the listener can go through this process in a way that's not going to encourage this upregulation. So
Mhm.
you've said the faces. So if I'm telling my children to get dressed, I'm actually going to perhaps turn off the television if they're watching a show, or pause the screen or whatever it is. We're going to get face to face. Before that, am I going to take some deep breaths? Am I going to try to regulate myself before heading to them? Like, walk me through maybe, the steps of how we can get out the door in a way that is not going to, trigger that stress response right away, or ways that we can try to do this a little bit better.
100%. And you've put your finger right on it. Um, so a couple of things, and I'll draw from my own family experience as well. We have a very timed exit. It's a series of things need to happen at certain times to get out the door in the morning. And I know you're a big proponent of this. We have prepared where possible,
Right.
right? So we have a system, and as much of the system that can happen the night before happens. And we have alarms set to remind us of certain events. And we acknowledge, I think in some ways, everyone's got time blindness. We acknowledge that transitions need time, right? So if your setup requires your kiddo to make the transition off the screen in 2 minutes, you're not giving them enough buffer. The transition actually takes 5 minutes. And the transition might need to be your physical human presence, putting a hand on their body to cut through the noise of the screen,
Yes.
being like, hey, bud, right? Time to go. Because if you close the gap between you and your kiddo, you are less likely to yell, right? Which is less likely to upregulate you, less likely to upregulate them. And you put your finger right on it. We need to check in. Co-regulation requires us to check in with ourselves before making that connection, right? Like, where am I at? And especially if you're in a high stress time, recognizing, like, okay, this is going to be a tough week. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that means like kind of faking it till you make it. So if you know your voice is going to get loud and flat, kind of putting it on a little bit. Your kids will hear through it, but it's better than the shouting.
Sure. Yes.
Or even honestly, I'm a fan like use a home system to press a button. You know, if you can't close the gap, to press a button and be like, like hello, your presence is requested upstairs.
Yes. The words matter too, how you're saying it and what you're saying.
Oh, totally, totally. And a lot of parents try to keep it, and like guilty, I've been here. A lot of parents try to keep it playful, but what they're actually doing is sarcasm, which is also not it's not actually playful, right? Things like, oh,
Yes.
was that so hard?
Right.
Not actually playful.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, checking in with ourselves, sometimes faking it till we make it. And recognizing, I mean, I've said this to myself, my husband, all of my clients. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So, when someone gets going about, and he won't get off the system. And sometimes I stand right in front of it. I'll be like, oh, he always. So you can see this coming.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that because we can see it coming, like they're letting us down. But actually, what's happening is the fact we can see it coming is contributing to our upregulation.
Right.
When what our kids need us to do is to see it coming and thus plan for it and check in with ourselves, even just a beat.
This is so good. Like so simple and so easy to forget in the moment. Can we talk a little bit about co-regulation some more? Because you've brought it up. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot. Can you share? I think you've sort of been explaining in these examples what it looks like, but what does it mean? What would a broad definition be of co-regulation? And then, how does it come into practice?
Yeah. So co-regulation is using the capacity of your, stronger, more robust relaxation response, but your more regulated nervous system to regulate your kiddo's nervous system. So, in the same way that our heart and breath rates attune to the folks around us, no one is more down regulating for a child before puberty. No one is more down regulating than mom.
Okay.
Mom's calm presence pumps the brakes more than anything. Dad is a good second.
Okay.
Right? Or other caregivers. I'm in no way trying to suggest that other caregivers aren't powerful. They are. Um, but like the kiddo's primary person, it's going to pump the brakes. And you often hear, clinicians and teachers and parents talking about self-regulation. Children learn self-regulation through co-regulation. right? Because when they're not okay, when they're up here, and let's all acknowledge that our sense of self, just like our kiddos, our sense of self is so wrapped up in our kids
Mm-hmm.
that when they're not okay, we're not okay. It's hard to watch our kids struggle.
Yes.
And so that's why they need us to come in, low so that we meet them with like, we got it. It's okay, right? Your big feelings, your big sounds. I can handle all of that. I'm here with you. We got this. But that's a presence thing, right? That's a
Yeah.
presence thing. You can't, the example I often give is you can't tell a cat, I'm safe, come over here. I'm safe, trustworthy, and will take care of you. Come here now, right? You can't speak to that part of their brain. When children aren't okay, because when humans aren't okay, you can't speak to the part of their brain that is heavily responsible for logic.
Right.
And we know this before they're 4, right? Before they're 4, we're like, what's going on? They tired? Are they underslept? Overslept? Are they hungry? Overstimulated? Like we remember the body. And then basically, as soon as they enter the realm of logic, we completely forget. And we ask them, like, what's with you? They don't know. They're just
Sure.
little reactive beings. And so they need us to come in to bring them down. And then after the fact, be like, whoa, that was tough, right? I always tell my husband, stop asking Harvey what happened when he's crying and he's really loud.
Mm-hmm.
Like check his body, as long as you're not seeing any visible wounds, all you need to know is that he's not okay. But if you say like, "Whoa, buddy, what happened?" He'll go, "I was running up the stairs." And it
Yes.
keeps him in dysregulation,
Yes.
right? So you got to bring them down and then later on be like, "Oh, what happened?"
Right. So how do we bring them down?
Yeah. Everyone knows their kid. Everyone knows their kid and they know what works better than they realize. But it's again, preparation and planning is helpful. So for example, and this is where attunement comes into regulation, right? You must know with your boys, like if you're playful and silly with them, will that sometimes like get them back online?
They, yes, but then it can get out of control, you know? So then it can make matters worse sometimes because then it brings them into like a state of excitement. But
Totally.
yes, we can try to make a joke in the moment to help things.
Okay. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes the motor just gets running too fast again, just in a different direction. Um, and have you ever really biffed it with that? Like, have you ever made a joke and then they get angrier at you?
Yes,
Yeah, been
100%.
there so many times. And that's because we make that mistake, and parents are going to make mistakes because we're human. It's part of being human. Um, we make that mistake, and that's a misattunement, right? Our kiddos are giving us the information that we intuitively know they've gone past the point where silliness is going to be helpful. Maybe they've gone past the point where like big hugs, right? And that like that physical closeness and pressure is going to be helpful. So if they're really high, right? If they're like 7 to 10 out of 10 on a stress scale, generally just being around, right? And trying to downregulate yourself, right? Trying to acknowledge that this is hard for you and you're just going to regulate yourself, just trying to be around them so that they aren't alone as they escalate.
Mm-hmm.
But ideally, in an ideal situation, we get them before they're way up there. And that's where parents know a lot about their kid. Oh, yeah, they need cuddles. They need quiet. They need silliness. Oh my goodness. My son was actually, my son's almost 8, and making one of his stuffed animals talk will do just about anything. Um, Wrestling, my kid's a big wrestler. So, and again, it won't work if he's like really, really up there. But sometimes you can get him and be like, all right, bud, I get it. You're angry, frustrated. Like, let's beat up this pillow together. Right?
Sure.
Because if they're really angry, you don't want to go in with like, hey, let's take some deep breaths together. Right? That's probably going to send them higher.
Sure.
Right? But no, like sitting back and being like, actually, what does work with my kid?
Mm-hmm.
Silliness, wrestling, closeness, hugging, quiet, lights off, getting outside, changing venue, just even changing, like, whoa, like, let's just go outside, bud. Even just changing room can be super helpful.
This is all really good. And what you're saying is like often we do know what is best. And so just taking that moment to like tune in and be like, okay, I have the tools that I need to be able to support my child. And what does that look like? Because I think often when we're in public places, this can like be amplified, or we're with other family members or friends, or the situation is it's not just one on one, or you have multiple children and things can escalate quickly. Like we had to go to buy soccer cleats yesterday. So we went to the mall and I was with my 2 older children who are 8 and 10, and they were having like a full fist fight in the middle of the aisle. And I can't even remember what it was about, something very simple. But I realized after I wanted to hurry up and get it done so then we could have dinner. They were probably already hungry at that point. They had just come home from school. They usually need a little bit of downtime, but I just wanted to get it done, get it off the list. And so I'm standing there in the middle of the aisle, breaking up a fist fight. Like, how do we, you know, co-regulate in these moments, especially when there's other people around or when you're dealing with more than one child? Like, do you go to one and then the other? Do you try to do both at the same time? Or if you have more than two? I mean, talk to me about this. And I also want to learn a little bit more about what you're saying with attunement. And I think you're giving us some of these tools, but can you share more on, I think when things get amplified and you're not in the ideal place to try to manage it.
Yeah. Um, okay, so a couple of things. I have one, I have one child, so I am a hobbyist compared to you. Like, we outnumber him, and that is everything, right? And again, I think it comes back to forgetting the body, forgetting humanity. Just because something is normal doesn't make it reasonable or easy for our nervous system. So, for example, driving is stressful, right? It's inherently upregulating. So, if we're going to the mall after school, first of all, you and your kiddos are already probably out of spoons. Do you know that concept?
No.
Oh, spoons theory is just a way to describe, it's actually from traumatic brain injuries to help you conceptualize your energy as a limited resource.
Okay.
Okay. So I will often say, like, oh, we're out of spoons. We got no spoons left. So at the end of your day, you're already spoon depleted. They are. Then you've got to drive somewhere. I imagine getting three boys in and out of cars, period.
Out the
Road
door.
trip.
Yeah. Again.
Yeah.
Yes.
And fun fact, when we are hungry, our nervous systems are more likely to dysregulate.
Okay.
When we don't have, I won't go into the neurobiology of it now, but I never recommend doing anything stressful on an empty stomach, whether it's an interview, work interview, tricky conversation, tricky moment. Super empty stomach is a great way to set yourself up for stress and anxiety to rise.
Mm-hmm.
So the intuition about snacks is a good one. That can literally help pump the brakes. Another little pro tip, I once learned from a pediatric OT, occupational therapist, that it's really hard to stay dysregulated when you're sucking on something. And
Mm.
so at my office, we have vintage candy machines, and kids get a quarter from their therapist to get like some Skittles at the end of session. But I recommend with kiddos who are coming in really high, to give them a lollipop. Like, here you go.
Okay.
It helps pump the brakes. So maybe get some of those, if you're a sugar-free family, get the sugar-free lollipops in the fanny pack. 1, 2, 3. We can get through this,
Keep
guys.
lots on hand. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And in those moments, your response is so natural and and ultimately so unhelpful, right? Because your nervous system is like, let's pick up speed to
Mm-hmm.
get through this. Except we all know that, if we pick up speed in our cars, we can't be as careful and skillful, right? Those
Right.
turns, those hard stops become a lot trickier.
Yes.
And something I have really had to adopt in my parenting is acknowledging that when we've got an audience, that is going to be hard for our nervous systems, right? We are going to be projecting all kinds of things on the people around us, and we're not even conscious of it, right? What must they think? Oh my goodness, I need to make my children quiet now.
Sure.
Because culturally we say we like children just so long as they actually behave like tiny adults.
Exactly. Yes.
And I've really had to acknowledge that and then make family choices that we're going, not all the time, we fail frequently. We are going to center the emotional relationship with our kiddo. And so that sometimes that means, leaving events where he is demonstrating through his behavior, even if he says he wants to stay, but he's demonstrating through his behavior that he's out of spoons and he's going to blow his stack. Right? It's because sometimes we don't want to go. It's not always stress in the like negative direction. Sometimes we're like, no, I want to stay with my friends. I'm just going to
Yes.
push you till 11 p.m. and then tell you to calm down. Right?
It's happened more than I can say for sure. It's happened a lot. But I do appreciate how you're understanding, and also there are the things that we can be doing. Um, so this practice of attunement, understanding it's not just trying to stay calm, that it's a little bit more than that, and sometimes we do have to make changes in order to make those situations a little bit easier. Um, can we talk a little bit about what you call rupture and repair? I think I've given you some great examples of the rupture portion, and I can probably give you a ton more. But like you're saying, no one gets it right all the time, and despite our best efforts, and trying to plan and trying to have snacks or make sure everyone has slept or make sure we have these systems in place, you know things happen, and unfortunately, that it's not going to be perfect all the time. And that's just the reality. So for someone who is going through and has a situation like a crazy morning or fight in the mall or, something that happens, what is this rupture and repair? And, what does it look like?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to acknowledge that I've been there so many times, right? We all lived through 2020 and 2021.
Yes.
We all have moments that if we got a do-over with more spoons, we would take another run at them. And it's also important to acknowledge that most of us didn't grow up with parents, right? This is cyclical. Most of us didn't grow up with parents who knew how to do repair skillfully, who wanted us to apologize and yet never modeled apologizing, right? If you want a kiddo who takes accountability, you've got to model accountability. And
Yeah.
just as a side note, especially for parents of younger children, but for all parents, the research bears out that parents overestimate their child's ability developmentally by about 3 years.
Wow.
So we expect of a 3-year-old what's more appropriate for a 6-year-old. And again, that feeds into our dysregulation, our expectations and reactions to moments.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, we need to lower our expectations and know that ruptures are going to happen. Repairs, I'm of the perspective, are always the parent's responsibility because we have so much power and influence. We're gods to our children. We forget because it's how we're designed that parents are gods, all knowing and
Mm-hmm.
shaping their kids' worlds. And I'm sure if you're parenting a teenager, you're like, no, that's not true. That's not how they perceive me.
I still
But
feel this way about my own parents sometimes too. And then I have to check myself and be like, well, they're just like me, how I was when they were that age, and so it's interesting because I still see them in that light, right? I still put them on a pedestal. I still think, well, shouldn't you know? Or like, how do you not know this? Right. So I think it's so easy to forget.
Mhm.
And I would just want to mention before you continue, I do have a neurodivergent kiddo and their executive functioning. And for anyone who has ADHD is typically 30% less, right? So you're saying that people overestimate their child's abilities by 3 years. And if that child is neurodiverse, they're already delayed by maybe a few years, right? So you're overestimating that, and they're already a little bit under what that is already. So if they're a 10-year-old, their functioning is at a 7-year-old, but you're expecting them to act like a 13-year-old. Well, that's like a huge gap. And so a lot can happen with the rupture process, I would imagine.
Yeah, and you've named it so beautifully, the difference between what we call chronological age and developmental age. And neurodivergent children tend to lag socially and emotionally. So and I saw it at my son's birthday party last year. My kiddo has like we have these fascinating conversations about the nature of the universe, and intellectually there's a lot of capacity. And he just seems a little more immature than even
Yes.
some of the other boys his age. Right? They're less attuned. That's a whole other episode. But you're spot on. You're spot on. And so we have all this influence. And thus, in the same way that for co-regulation, we need to use the capacity of our nervous system to regulate their little bodies, even if we perceive it as like they're in the wrong, we need to regulate them and then facilitate the repair. I gave an example like, whoa, that was so tough. that was such a tough moment, right? That's the beginning of it. Repair doesn't necessarily mean saying, I'm sorry.
Mm.
It means repairing the relationship, bringing the closeness and the regulation back into the relationship. And sometimes that does mean apologizing. I distinctly remember a very not proud moment, kind of peak lockdown, massive snowstorm. I had been running on no spoons for a long time, and I yelled, I flipped my lid, and my kiddo, he was so little, and he said, "Why would you talk to a little boy that way?"
Oh,
Oh my good, like knife to the heart.
sure.
And that immediately brought me down. And you're right, kiddo. And
Mhm.
I'm sorry, right? Mama's not okay today. Mama's having a tough day. I'm sorry that I yelled. That must have been frightening. And that often it it moves us on so much faster, right? Rather than arguing about the logic of everything, what
Mhm.
happened, who was to blame, that keeps us in rupture. But facilitating the repair, ugh, that was a tough moment. We okay, bud? Right? Actually tends to move us on a lot faster.
So this repair part, it doesn't have to be like a serious, let's have a meeting and let's sit down and let's hash it out. It can be very simple. Are there any other examples that you would suggest of this repair, maybe at different ages or for different, you know, types of children? Anything else that you can say for the repair part?
Yeah, I would add that, there are certain lines like, oh, that was tough. Like that was a tough moment. That was tricky. I use the word tricky a lot with my own kid, and with clients. And most parents, again, because our plates are over full, most parents don't want to approach, they don't want to approach repair with planning, with family meetings, right? They wait until we're all really not okay to say things that they actually don't want to follow through on, like, that's it, no screen time for the week,
Sure.
which you then need to enforce, right? So if something is frequently happening, I would always recommend that parents get on the same page, right? Make the time. Maybe you need to put it a couple weeks down the road. Maybe you acknowledge, like, well, we're not going to get to this in a couple weeks, so we're going to have to cope with status quo. But make the time, put it in the calendar to sit down, and the two of you figure out, where are we at? What are we seeing? What change do we want to create? Here's what we're thinking. And then even young kids can come into the conversation. So maybe you and your partner have noticed that when your child gets a certain amount of screen time, their mood and behavior is really tricky,
Mm-hmm.
or a certain type of screen time. And so maybe you and your partner get on the same page and you're like, okay, you know what? It's not going to be YouTube anymore, right? It can be whatever, but it's not YouTube. We're going to take it off the devices. Or it's a certain amount of YouTube, or it's a certain amount of screen time. So you guys get on the same page and then sit down with your kiddos and talk about how we've made this decision because here's what we've noticed. Your kiddos are probably not going to get super on board, but you might be surprised. So if you say to them, look, dude, you can have an hour of screen time a day and it's up to you. Like, do you want to go mornings, no screens? Or 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the evening, like if you can, bring them into the conversation. Um, and then that way repairs are going to be a lot easier. That way repairs are going to be a lot easier. Another good line for repairs is, you know what? It's okay. We're all learning. We're all learning. And right now we're learning how to do transitions. Right now we're learning how to do less screen time.
This is so good. I have so much here that I've really taken so much from this conversation, and I've kept you for a really long time. I think we could have just so many different conversations on so many different topics. Um, but as we close out, you've given us so many helpful and practical things that we can be doing right now. Are there any other sort of tips or tricks or helpful advice that you can impart with the listener that's going to make life a little bit easier when it comes to the co-regulation and showing up even though we are healing ourselves, and just being able to be there for our children in a more present and purposeful way.
Yeah. So I think I've given a few tips around children. So I think it's important we end with us.
Mm-hmm.
Something I emphasize to parents all the time is your wellness is your kiddo's wellness,
Yes.
right? If you're not okay, it's hard for them to be okay. So we know a lot about our kids when we reflect on it. Knowing what works for us is equally, if not more important.
Yeah.
So those check-ins, again, often we need on the fly things. I find a lot of my clients whose nervous systems are really, really high, like maybe hypervigilance or at least very high stress load most of the time. These are clients who will say, like, don't you dare tell me to meditate. And that's
Right.
okay. I would never at that point. But something called progressive muscle relaxation, tensing all your muscles, and then when you breathe out, letting your muscles go is really effective on the run. Really, really
Mm,
effective on the run. So know if try that out. And if that's your thing, if that works for you, tense all your muscles, but make sure you exhale and relax them. Yep.
yes.
And let them go. Or like a hand on your heart
Mm-hmm.
when you breathe, like just getting that pressure sensory input when you take that breath. Um, Butterfly taps. So crossing your arms across your body and tapping one side at a time, rhythmically a few times. Shockingly, I do that whenever I need to get blood work done. And then they're like, we need your arm.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Give it up.
um, anything that brings you into your body, smelling your
Yes.
peppermint halo stick, taking a sip of your tea or coffee before you do the thing. It's less about the caffeine and more that sensory input consciously in a supportive way brings us back into our bodies, which brings us back into the awareness we need.
So good. And we can do this at a red light when we're at the checkout and there's a big line at Costco, right, before we're about to yell at our kids to hurry up. We got to leave out the door. Like the clenching, sometimes I want to clench so hard. And then it's like the breath and the release. And so this has been so helpful. I'm so grateful that we had this conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Where can the listener find you if they want to learn more about you? If they're in the Ottawa area and they want to get some more support hands-on from you in your practice, or if they just want to follow along with your journey and learn more as you go.
Yeah, they might need to look at your show notes. They can, because I didn't make it easy. Kathryn Ann Flynn on Instagram and kathrynannflynn.com. My center is called the Wren Center, like the bird, WRENCENTRE.ca. I run retreats. I run psychotherapy group retreats. I'm working on my second book, which is basically about everything we've spoken about, right? So cultivating change from the bottom up. Um, and I've got lots of resources online. Yeah, happy to connect with anyone who's interested.
We'll definitely put that in the notes so that it's nice and easy for everyone to find. Kathryn, it's been such an honor and my privilege to have this conversation. Take
Oh,
care.
thank you so much for having me.
Wow. I could have stayed on with Kathryn for so long. I think this has been like such a beautiful conversation. Often, we've maybe read parenting books or we listened to podcasts or maybe we've, had our own, psychotherapy sessions or sessions with counselors or experts. But in these stressful times, when we're in these busy seasons, sometimes it can be easy to get out of our routines, or sometimes we forget that the simplest things sometimes have the most profound impact. And this conversation with Kathryn has really been that mirror for me, in that sometimes we know better, but we don't always do better. But there are ways that we can come back to it that can be easy, that can be implemented right away, that doesn't have to be complicated. So I invite you to definitely head to the notes for this podcast episode. Check out all of the incredible resources that Kathryn has to offer. And I'll certainly be sharing when her book comes out, because I know I will be one of the first to be purchasing it to learn more about how we can be parenting while we are healing, while we are on this journey ourselves and learning. If you like this conversation, I invite you to share it with a friend, someone who's in this juggle of parenting life right now as well. And could you please rate it and write me a short review in Apple Podcasts? Let other people know how important this information is, because as others are doing it, it's easier for us to do it as well. And certainly come on back. We've got so many great people that we're chatting with on The Juggle is Real coming up. So I look forward to seeing you then. And until then, take good care.